You have to refresh it.
Okay, here we are. Here we are. Welcome in, everybody, to America Disclosing Uncensored. I am Michael Anthony. With me tonight is the one and only that Art Bell named him all by himself, the Ghost Scientist. Why? Because he's brilliant. He brings information forward. He always has. He's coming out of the darkness. He's going to be here with me for you with messages because you know exactly what I know. If there was something of secrecy, you would be the last to know. And we're going to discuss some of that. We are in times now where we must question everything, everyone. Also, a special thank you to go out to iHeartRadio for streaming this tonight for us. We really appreciate that. With me tonight, he's going to basically take charge. And of course, we're going to have discussion and talk a little bit amongst each other. And hopefully you'll get and pick up on all the important factors of the information. I also want to say this to everybody, that it is Easter time, and whatever you believe in your heart is on how you like to celebrate it, you must do it that way. Do what you feel is good. Bring out the love in your family. And with that, we're going to go live. And also, just so you know, you can also pick us up on YouTube at 10 o'clock Talk, Studio 10 Broadcasting, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, on our YouTube channel, 10 o'clock Talks, where we do America Disclosing Uncensored. It's everything that is censored being uncensored by us. So good evening and welcome in, Mr. Ghost Scientist.
How's it going?
Oh, that was a mouthful. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. And I'm so happy to have you here with me. I really appreciate you, keeping in touch with me and us discussing some of these things. I think they're as important as you do. And I think the public has a right to understand and know that there's information out there, and you happen to come across it many, many years ago. The first one on the ladder, so to speak, in many ways, to say, hey, listen. And you sat there and you read 57 pages of this fascinating book. So why don't we start with the book? Is that where you want to go with this?
Well, yeah, and originally we didn't get the book. There still hasn't been an actual copy of the book, and even after its republishing in 2013, I still to this day don't believe that was the actual book. I think that might have been a misinformation, disinformation campaign in some ways, connected with somebody that was trying to put information out to the public. So initially, we just started getting pages of this thing. It was kind of circulating around the ultraweb for quite a few years. This is going back to like 2007, and there was some links and some leaks that were coming out, and we were getting several redacted pages over about a 8 to 9 month period of time. And then it came out that it was a possibility that this was actually a book, and started deep diving into possibilities of where this book was published, how it was published, how it was supposed to have come out, who was behind it, the author. Started doing some deep dives into it, and initially it came out as the CIA FOIA Adam and Eve story. With the author being, and of course, it's the history of cataclysms by the supposed author, this Chan Thomas guy. And again, I've been researching this for years and years and years, and I don't think anyone has ever come to a conclusion of who this Chan Thomas person is. I did a broadcast on this about 7 years ago where we deep dived into a few possibilities. The closest possibility that I found was possibly an agent with the Chinese Communist Party Central Intelligence Division, or the Intelligence Department of the CCP, which is, I still say that I kind of lean that direction, that it's possible that this Chan Thomas guy happened to be this particular individual, because at the time that this was being written and released, which goes back to the mid 1960s, in its writing and its formation, this particular individual happened to be going to school, this Chinese Communist Party individual happened to be going to school at the time here in the United States in San Francisco. So it's possible that the first author happens to be this individual. Is it, do we know this definitively? No, we do not. And there are lots of different avenues that Chan Thomas character has gone. And again, to this day, I don't think there's any definitive answer to whom actually wrote this. Now, in my own opinion, and on all the research that I've done, I think this Chan Thomas is a made-up individual. I think it's a conglomerate of intelligence that was coming mostly through the CIA, the Central Intelligence Department, and through internal intelligence inside of the DOD. And this happened to get leaked at the time, and then it's formed. And then there's an initial publishing that takes place in 1965. Whereas as soon as it's published, the CIA instantly comes out, deems the book publishing as being that of a national security threat. It is then scrubbed and tagged with an NSA tag and put on the shelf. It is then kept in hiding. No, it's not really spoken about. There's no real information until about 2003, between 2003 and 2007, where there are some leak pages that start coming out on the net. And then, interestingly enough, this particular document, after these pages start being leaked, which again, I think could be a form of a psyop in a lot of ways. I mean, if I was going to set up a psyop, this may be a motive that I may use to put out information to the public, because then it's declassified as a book declassification on 6/24 of 2013. And then all of a sudden it's spoken about all over the place.
Right.
We start getting individuals that start finding this document. They're getting it off the deep web. It then makes its way onto IRC and a few other relay chat centers that were talking about it, discussing it. It's then spoken about in the CT community, and then all of a sudden becomes like a mainstream thing up until about, I'd say about 2015, and then it goes almost completely silent at that stage in the game.
I had a thought while you were speaking, and you bring up a lot of great points of information on how you're seeing this and what has occurred. Is it possible? There's many possibilities. Is it possible that this is two last names, like Jimmy Chain and Danny Thomas? I'm just saying, is it possible when you look at the name, not being able to find any research on who these people may or may not have been? Because I actually was trying to play Scrabble with the name. I really was. And I couldn't come up with anything except for the fact that the possibility, and we might be able to disclose that someday by saying, hey, we figured this part out, and we can do another round on where we are with it if we have time left in a good way for us to be able to ever do that. But what are your thoughts on the possibility of two names? I guess as possible as anything else.
Well, that's exactly why I brought up the fact of this Chan. It's actually the individual that I was talking about in San Francisco. His name is Lee Chan.
Right. You did say that.
And then the second person, which was his U.S. handler, his name was Eric Thomas, which is why it's a very big possibility. Like, to me, I think if you were to go down the rabbit hole and go as far as you can, I think it more leads to this Lee Chan and Eric Thomas as being the coordinators or possibly the handlers of this particular document making its way to the mainstream.
Right.
At least during that time period in the 1960s, say between like 63 and 65, when it was actually first published, and then of course instantaneously redacted, taken off of shelves, and deemed to be a national security threat.
Yeah.
And then you have to ask the question, I mean, of course, this is one of those questions you have to ask yourself is, why if in fact none of the information inside of all of these documents, and of course the first release was only like 57 pages, most of which was redacted, and then the release in 2013 becomes ridiculous. It's like there was supposedly one release at over 100 pages, another release at over 200 pages, neither of which I think both of them are fabricated, simply because of the way in which it's written, the way it's spoken about, and its format. It just didn't fit. Like after that initial 57-page release, it didn't fit its formatting.
Correct. Understood. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess with all that said, you've been very clear to it. And I guess the way you have us in our timeline here, you have just spoken also about the 1965, the CIA classified the book. And we'll be moving on, I guess, to classifying 213, although you did bring up some limited information to there if you want to continue any further on that part of the order.
No, just like I said, like over that time period between about 2003 and 2007, there was, several leaked documents that were coming out on the ultra web, which is below the deep web, by the way, for all of you that don't know that. It was just sporadically coming out, and then there would be a page seen, during some talks that we were doing on IRC, and then after that, it just seems like you slowly got like this trickle down of a few pages up until that 2013 date, and then you get more of a declassified after there's a filing of an FOIA, which we did, the filing for the FOIA, and ended up getting those 57. Actually, and it was 59 in total, but 57 that you could actually make any sense out of, because two of the pages were so redacted, pretty much all they had was the header and file number, and that was about it. You couldn't really make anything else out of those other two documents.
Gotcha. Well, what
makes that interesting, and the reason why we're talking about this now.
Yeah, go ahead with that.
I think it's highly important that we're discussing about this particular document, its development throughout its intelligence world, and in doing so, getting it out to the public, like the whole process and everything. Why are we discussing this, right? Why are we talking about it? And though there are a whole bunch of information when it comes to biblical ideology with inside of this particular book, by the way, it's the majority of it is in a biblical style formatting, in the way that's talking about its past, its history, its future, all of those kinds of things were very much in a biblical ideological writing style, or not what you would call like quatrains or something like that if you were to look at like an individual writer like Nostradamus, but more of a biblical writer like Aquinas or somebody along that lines. And not to get caught up in all of that, right? So what I did was break down this document into its finite points. I've always said if you ever want to get to the truth of any information or truth of any document or any truth to anything that is held in the gray or in working in the gray, you have to eliminate the persons, places, events, and things. And once you get rid of all of that, you get down to the core information that's held within inside of any type of information, right? It's almost like using a mathematical ideology or mathematical logistics in order to break down intelligent thought, or a way of which to decipher information in such a way that you're not getting distracted by the storytelling or by the storytellers. So there are specific things that I wanted to break down in this that I think that will make a lot of sense to the listeners of the show towards the end of the show, when we start coming up to this future that we're currently dealing with now, events that are currently taking place right now, not only geologically, but socially worldwide. So I'd like to cover that so that at least the listening audience knows kind of where this may be going.
Yeah, I think that would be wonderful, because I think the direction you're taking is the most appropriate way. I was blown away when I looked at how you had created this PDF and sent it over to me. I think in ways what you've said has said a lot to this point, discussing most of how things started, where we came from, where we are now, what we're looking at, and we're in this moment of time that is just different, where awareness is everything, and everybody wants answers, and everybody is paying attention to everything. And I think this is perfect timing for it. So, how would you feel on uh, delivering the next part of the component of this PDF that you sent to me? I mean, I know what it says, and I'll be more than happy to read it. But again, whenever you're ready, we can go with number one.
So I took out the events. Basically, in each one of these documents, there was a series of events and cataclysms that were described, mostly, again, like I said, with inside of a biblical ideological kind of concept or verbiage or writing. And I took away that and just simply focused on, okay, what are the specific events in its chronological order that is spoken about in this particular document?
Right.
So we start with number one, which is it claims that there would be world earthquake events, and these events would be increasing and becoming more frequent and in locations not known currently today, right? So that was the very first event. Now, mind you, this is before we started seeing massive earthquakes happening in regions that hadn't seen earthquakes in extremely long periods of time. Not only that, but in the types of magnitudes in which that we currently are seeing these earthquakes happening, and the amount of destruction that these earthquakes and the more frequency of these particular earthquakes. So that was the first thing that kind of went, well, wait a second. I've seen this. Where did I see this before?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Where? Everywhere.
And having looked at the ones that happened in Venezuela, the one in Japan, the one, like all of these events that were all leading through these earthquakes and these massive devastating earthquakes that had taken place, that kind of perked me up to, man, I know I've seen this somewhere before. Went back to my documents and files, and I went, oh my, this was in this was in that book, and then started researching it again. Then you start seeing in number two, you have tsunami events. These are excess walls of water. Now, described within the book contents of this, and mind you, we've had some pretty massive tsunamis in recent years that have been extremely devastating tsunamis at that. So, again, this goes in the timeline of events. But in the book, it describes these as being excess walls of water over 2 miles in height.
Correct.
Now, this is going to make sense. That specific number is going to make sense much later in this discussion. So if you all are paying attention and keeping along with this, you're gonna see how this all ties in. The next part of this, which is number three, is going to be geostorms. These are going to be geostorms producing winds, and in the book, in the document, claiming to be over 1,000 miles per hour. Then number four in the sequence of events would be massive flooding of coastal cities worldwide in an over 2 miles deep water receding inland in the United States, specifically in the United States, was what it was targeting as far as what it was speaking about in the book, although this claims to be a worldwide event. So you could expect regions like Japan, coastal areas of China, Russia, basically all coastlines around the world would be affected by this particular wall of water, these tsunamis, and these geostorm events that will be producing massive amounts of wind. And now we get to number five, which is a major mass extinction event worldwide. This is a die-off of billions of animals and humans. Now, what makes this particular event interesting is it does not state what causes this particular event, right?
True. Yeah.
So then it becomes, okay, is the mass extinction event of these billions of people and animals worldwide, is this due to just the above? Well, you could possibly come to that conclusion, although there's information that comes out after this that doesn't exactly state that, right? So, which is why it wouldn't make any sense. If you were trying to put this in chronological order, would that not be the last chronological order of events? Would be you have a major extinction of animals and humans worldwide, and that would basically be the end of your entire scenario, right? But you don't. So then it leads you to question, it doesn't directly state what those events that caused that particular incident to take place. Now,
Right.
I will tell you my opinion, and I have to state this as my opinion. My opinion is what that is talking about is this recent biological attack that we had worldwide, where you have 2/3 of the world's population who has taken this, what's deemed to be and considered to be a vaccine, which isn't a vaccine at all.
Agreed.
So I could see that as being this event of this major mass extinction event that takes place worldwide, including with inside of animals. And there's a reason why I'm saying that, because now they're starting to grow crops with this particular protein genetic sequence of the mRNA, where it's being grown with inside of leafy greens. If that makes its way into the animal kingdom, then that can spread with inside of the animal kingdom, including during the process of shedding off of cells from one animal to the next animal. Whereas where you could get the animal die-off section of that specific scenario. Whereas I believe we're already in the starting stages of an extinction event when it comes to humans.
Yeah. Yeah. It might not happen fast, but in the long game, every step that you so far have mentioned brings us to this point of fact of things that have occurred, and even the possibility when we talk about the What's in the Sky program, of what they're doing there as well with Sun and Dim and all that, and
absolutely,
and the
yes.
harp, of course. And so these could be those baby steps into using the long game narrative to take us to the point of this type of ELE.
Oh, I completely agree with you. I think as you follow this series of events that is spoken about, and you're also talking about something that wasn't written a few months ago, though it could have been, and that's kind of the point.
Exactly.
How do you have something that was written in the middle 1960s that literally sounds like a playbook with what we in society and society worldwide is currently dealing with right this very minute?
Yeah, I would agree that this was plenty of time to bring something necessary to the public's eye with the best intentions. However, how will people take it and what had happened under redactions and, people getting angry over pulling it off shelves and so forth. That tells you in a certain way and fashion that there could have been a fly on the wall in some room that was well aware of an orchestration that was being developed the same way when we look into Project Lockstep and 100 years ago of a think tank who was writing the future. Also aligns exactly with everything that you're presenting right now.
Well, and then you have, again, you have to ask yourself the question of this document was just nonsensical, right? This was just some author, even if it was under a ghost pseudonym of Chan Thomas. If that was the case, and it was just a half-heartedly written book that went into publishing, in 1965, why would the CIA need to make it an act of national security to have it completely taken off the shelves, scrubbed and redacted, and then placed in a vault until much later on? And by the way, this is currently on the CIA FOIA library. So you can literally go directdirectly to the CIA's own library, and this is actually in that library. So we know that it in fact was taken and scrubbed and redacted, taken off the shelves, and the CIA did deem it a national security risk. So then the question becomes, if they deemed it a national security risk, is something of what is being stated within inside the document some form of reality or some base of reality? And if it wasn't a base of reality in the 1960s, is it possible that's a base of reality now? Now, something I haven't spoken about, and we're going to continue on with the first timeline of this particular book, but something else that I've never really spoken about before is it possible that this could have been a document that was produced by the CIA during the mid-1940s to the early 1950s during the program of the Men Who Stare at Goats? Now, the reason why I bring that up is because at the time they were doing remote viewing, and they were strategically planning that we know this. There are documents to back up the statements that I'm making, that we, with inside of the intelligence department, were paying for and strategically planning in the dark, underneath cover of night, these programs in which we were training individuals how to do remote viewing. Is it possible that what we're seeing here in these timelines may not be from one specific individual? It may be from lots of individuals that were coming from some of the things that they may have been remote viewing on and seeing in the near future.
Right. Would that fall under what Ego Swan was doing?
Somewhat. And then again, you have to ask, again, it makes, I try to look at logic. What is a logical explanation of these particular events that have taken place? Not only from the aspect of that we see what's happening, we know what happened at that time period from the government, we see what's happening with inside of society today, but is there, without just correlation, is there a cause for that correlation? That's one of the biggest keys in investigating that I currently use I can show you the effects, right? We can talk on the effects. We can speak on the effects. Just like now, we can speak on the social effects that are happening worldwide.
Right.
But can we really pinpoint the cause of that? Because otherwise we're just making correlations without causation.
Well, I mean, if we could theorize on it and not be judged for that, because again, if we circle back on everything, we are experiencing every one of them in ways. In ways, yes. And that's why I say, is it about the long game? And, with the small steps till we come up to the point of, I mean, we have certain areas under protections, now called 15-minute cities being developed. We have the Build Back whatever, only placed in certain scenarios of areas. And it tells me geographically, they're preparing for something. Everything is fitting the puzzle in big ways, and everything that you were presenting tonight. And I want to just say this to everybody coming in. If you're not hearing this from the very beginning, you want to listen to this from the very beginning and pay very close attention. I would appreciate it that you do that. And getting back to my guest, to the ghost, yeah, I mean, this is mind altering in ways, but I think again, we're at that critical time. We were talking before going on, doing the test mic thing, all that phone. And, we had some little bit of verbiage going on, but I think we both understand the facts. As you even said, there's too many linemen, and it's the possibility of things, unknown things. And the fact that we no longer have trust in huge ways because of what we're experiencing, I think it just even correlates even more. And I don't think it would be to push a fear factor from 70 years ago, to now. I think we're actually living in that time of what this book was referring to.
I absolutely concur, and the last one in this entire list of events that they had, planned out, is the one that really raised an eyebrow, which is volcanology worldwide events. These are volcanoes long dormant becoming active and building pressure around the world.
Right.
Now, why do I say that at this stage in the game is extremely interesting? Because we currently, right now, as we sit in this chair and speak to each other over these airwaves, are currently experiencing this around the world. You have long dormant volcanoes, you have long dormant geysers, you have long dormant mountains that have been dormant for thousands of years that are currently starting to spit smoke, throw water in the air, create pressure rifts, and then also upheaval events that we're currently seeing, not only, excuse me, not only in Yellowstone National Park, but around the entire Ring of Fire.
Yeah, very true.
And mind you, these are not events that were taking place during the time period at which this book was supposedly written.
No, not at all. We weren't experiencing any of that. So again, back to the long thing. And even more so than what you're saying. I mean, when you look at the whole picture of some of the other scenario, whatever is inducing some of these factors to happen, I don't know if it's outer planetarial or interplanetarial, but I have a suspicion it's inner because, we are seeing things just change in front of our eyes, flooding, massive storms, 20 and 30 tornadoes touching down in a 2-day period in a very small place. We have a border crisis, and then suddenly we have a snowstorm, ice storm. It's almost like if you speak, we will respond. And logically, what we're hitting on is not even the whole entirety of the component, but the baby steps of it, to where everything that you're bringing to light right now, back to light again, by coming out from being silent. You may have been too silent too long, but I think at the right time right now, you're actually going to enlighten a lot of people to the possibility that the theories we're dropping here tonight make a lot of sense, and we need to pay very close attention.
Well, and then we get back to the next stage, which is cities being destroyed, listed in order. It starts out, these are destroyed cities. These are cities to be attacked. These are cities that, according to the documentation, were destroyed, which is Los Angeles, San Francisco, Dallas, Denver, Chicago, Detroit, Atlanta, New York City, and Washington, D.C. That's in the list. The rest of that list was redacted. You couldn't see the rest of the remaining cities on that specific list. But then there's another list that follows that list, that's cities to be attacked. And wouldn't you know that Baltimore happens to be at the top of that list?
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned it prior, and I'm glad you brought it back up, but true to fact. So what does that mean? I think in one of your posts, you also posted something today that made perfect sense of what no one was thinking about. And I noticed it after I was doing some scribbling myself, and we watched the video, and I think that you brought it up to in one of your posts. And I'm not going to say to anybody how I saw that or who you are, because I'm going to keep your privacy private. And but it was pretty amazing and impressive, where we learned about 2 pilots being aboard these massive transporters, and also with double steering systems, also with backup generators, but yet lost every component of anything to be operational. Then, of course, its demise, and not demise, was to only hit this pillar and take down something that we've seen. And logically, a lot of people see that as being the incident that took the bridge out. I don't know if that was all of the facts, because I got in trouble for posting something a little different. I'm not going to get into that, but it also added up.
Talking about posting the squibs that we're seeing on the bridge line.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then one of the other things was too, and I can't verify this, was and I can't say they were illegals or they had citizenships in the United States, but two of the men, and I say this with sadness, that perished. I believe one was from Mexico, one was from Guatemala. Just, and then we have facts of where we're hearing about who owned the ship. An Indian owned the ship. Then some said no, it was McConnell's sister-in-law that backed into the water. Keep your eyes on the water.
Isn't that interesting? And then outside of that, who was the pilot of the ship? The pilot was Ukrainian.
Yes.
The dock master who was supposed to be in charge of the actual vessel, which is also something that really hasn't been brought up, is the fact that the individual captain of the vessel actually wasn't supposed to be in charge of the vessel, that it was the dock master that was in charge of the vessel to take the vessel out. Secondly, I talked to a harbor master friend of mine over in Los Angeles, and was speaking to him about how these particular vessels are operated. After I saw the video from the captain that was listed, that the video that you saw, and in turn asked him, okay, I saw this video about this captain stating that, how these particular vessels are operated, how they're stored, they're steered in the water, especially inside of Short Harbor.
Right.
And, what are the backup or the redundancy programs in place? And he stated it as well. He said, well, I got to keep this on the down low. You can't really talk about it. But the fact of the matter is there is absolutely no way that vessel lost its steering. He said a vessel of that size has triple redundancy. And even in fact, if the backup generator on the bus 2 system of steering had gone out, there is a manual operated steering system that is actually in place so that they can still steer within safety parameters.
Right.
And mind you, this vessel wasn't traveling very fast. It was extremely heavy. It just wasn't traveling very fast.
Right.
So, and I happen to believe what he's stating, that it was obvious that this was not in any way, shape, or form an accident.
That's my conclusion.
How they want to turn it.
Yeah, that's my conclusion. And then we look at how are we going to suffer from this? What impacts it's going to have? And not only that, as soon as this happens, TikTok floods the gates again with information. Call them good, call them bad, but some of it was in different ways at different ports in different countries where these container ships go for pickups and delivery, to do their maritime deliveries and so forth. Crane systems falling and failing. So now, to me, it's a pure attack on the infrastructure of our well-being in the United States of America. So what was on the ship? Hazardous materials, it said. Plenty of sugar.
Containers, correct. And we're not talking about like a few thousand pounds. We're talking about tens of thousands of pounds of hazardous materials that were all, by the way, stacked in the front bow of the ship.
Right. Gas-powered cars. That's a no-no, of course. Sugar. So we're going to see impacts in great ways and great measurements. And I'm not talking about measuring a sugar cup. I'm talking about longevity of you not seeing things for a long, long time in certain ways. But yeah, so these different cranes units in different ports throughout the world, suddenly, maybe they were out there, not being seen enough. And people will say, well, hey, let me bring this to your attention. Maybe it was the people doing their due diligence finally. And I'm not saying finally that they're doing it, but finally us being able to see some of these other similarities of events that tie into exporting and importing to the United States. Because it's a total failure. The same thing that we ran across and in front of when we had nobody at the ports and they deemed certain things against truckers for non-delivery, nobody at the ports to unload, nobody to, this is the whole narrative of that same facilitation of pressure. Comply or we force. And I think that's where we're at. And again, looking at how far off we're going to be celebrating or would like to celebrate, get Joe Biden out of the office day as a national holiday event for us. Like everybody likes a cupcake day, has a dog day, it's your brother day. There's a day for everything. they're going to try to protect that. And who do we see now jumping on a plane to go and do speeches for Joe Obama? So you have the Joe Obama crew. And a lot of this, again, when we go even off page of what the topic is here, because I am, again, just more concrete, what seems to be proper information that is bringing us into these particular times that could be possibly end of times. But again, you cannot point a direct finger to say they will be of natural or of unnatural causes or by a man's hand at a red button. But something is taking place worldwide. These events are too large, there's too many, and they're not far in between. They're pretty much in alignments of where they want them to be, and they protect areas. You don't hear of incidents happening in what they call their secured 15-minute city zones of sanctuary cities. You don't see it. I promise you, you don't. I look and I try to observe it. So going through these numbers, and I'm going to turn it back over to you because you're a much better presentator than I am, especially on the information. But I say we have a lot to worry about. I say I believe in my heart we do, and preparation and preparedness in every way, every day from this moment on is something we should focus on.
Well, and again, I think it's, more that, how many coincidences do we need to claim are coincidences before we start seeing that there's correlation to these coincidences that they keep on selling the narrative of? I mean, how many more in order will it take before the society wakes up, opens their eyeballs, and realizes, hey, we're in the thick of things, and there are lots of players in the background that have been staying in the shadows and staying in the dark, and that are now just coming out, and that's without even trying to get to the there's a lot of biblical things that are happening right now that I don't know if people are aware of or not. I mean, we could discuss the red heifer event that's taking place. We
Right.
can discuss what the Muslim, the Muslim community, Islamic community worldwide is currently up to. I mean, all of these things it's not just one specific event, and it's not just in one specific location on this planet. It's worldwide, and these events are correlated. They have to be. It's too again, I don't see this as being a coincidental thing. I don't think that what came out in this information in these documents, otherwise we wouldn't be having this talk right now, is in any way just a coincidence in any way. So
I would agree.
After the events that we were talking about, the document continues to go on with geo-weather events, freezing of everything in its wake. There's some interesting things we could talk about there, but I think that'll kind of lead away from what's happening. And then also Asia and Siberia swallowed up subterranean, a subterranean region of Asia collapses, a massive region of it collapses in a massive scale.
Right.
Personally, I think this is directing towards the massive collider system that China has currently been building, and it's possible that could be a catastrophic collapse in its construction or in its build, and that could be something that could still possibly happen or still possibly come down the pike. Now we get to the really interesting stuff, because of course we covered all the stuff that was in the document, basically all of the events, which I believe are the most important events that take place in this document, to our present day. And I don't know if you could show this to your listening audience, but about 6 months ago, roughly, give or take about 6 months ago, this particular map was released as having been passed around the last Bilderberg meeting.
Is that the change in the geological structure of the United States? Yeah, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to hold it up, but I think I can give everybody a little bit of a shot of this. Let me see here.
So this particular geological map was being circulated in some pretty high elite circles, and was then leaked out to the public, again with inside of kind of the deep CT community, and it was sent to myself, and I started looking at this particular map, and its creation, where it came from, how its release came out. But more importantly is if you actually are viewing this map or looking at this map, what's more interesting to me is that you have major billionaires, to include Zuckerberg and the Bill Gates Foundation, along with BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street,
yeah,
who have been strategically buying lands, and to include the CCP, by the way, folks, who have been strategically trying to buy land in these exact regions at which this map shows is still landmass.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I noticed that. I really did. And the topography.
So let that sink in for a second, folks. What you're talking about is you're talking about a map that was released during the last Bilderberg meeting. It then gets released out to the public kind of through some shadiness. Then outside of that, it's like, okay, fine. Let's say that this is a reality, that this map was really produced to show what happens after these cataclysmic events take place. Well, again, you could just throw that out or discount it if it weren't for the fact that you currently have major billionaires and billionaire corporations who are currently buying up the land in these regions. And not only that, but starting to dump property and securities in regions that it shows to be completely either gone or completely underwater.
Exactly. And you know what? There's something else to this too that I used to talk about back in the early days. And you probably know about this, that there were people within the military, when they were going to retire, there was like this verbiage going around between everybody, where they're going to retire. And they all were given recommendations. And the recommendations were where you see the new lands, where they will be, where they will exist from. So that also signifies to me a huge triple red flag of information, because we were all talking about it at times, like, there's a bunch of us out here that do what we do, like what you did, what I try to do, that knew about that little component, but not always knowing about the thing of this information of this document inside this book. And now fitting that into there, I just needed to get that out while the light bulb was going off in the old man's mind here, because I think it's important. I think it's really important because they were inside. And so there were insiders who were sharing to people, suggesting to people that, hey, you might want to not live beachfront. And then there's the other scenario too. Why are they all building on the beaches? Well, I think that could have been disinformation in big ways, and maybe not, but because maybe they wanted something to look one way while the action would take place another way. So maybe everything we think we know.
Now you're starting to get there.
Exactly.
Now you're starting to get there. I think the whole show of Oprah and all these celebrities having beachfront properties, including Zuckerberg and all these other people, actually, when you see where he's building his underground hardened bunkers, and that that leads up to all of these individuals that we're talking about, and we're talking about some really powerful people, and powerful people that people haven't probably even heard of. I mean, this isn't just like celebrity billionaires, folks, that we're talking about here with Mark Zuckerberg, Oprah Winfrey, and several other major tech billionaires like Musk and Ellison and a few other ones. We're talking about individuals like Peter Thiel. And if you don't know who Peter Thiel is, he's, the CEO of the largest tech giant in the world, which is Palantir. And I'm going to tell you now, like, again, these are individuals that they must all be going either to the same meetings, the same clubs, or they're getting the same information, because it's not just one or two or three of these individuals. It is thousands of these individuals around the world who are currently building extremely hardened bunker systems around the world.
Yes. And they're stockpiling. They are stockpiling. And, if you look at some of the other means of what is going on under there, transportation systems and highways and everything else and storage facilities. And, many truckers even putting up on their own pages or making little TikTok videos.
Absolutely.
Here we are.
The under storage frozen facilities.
Yes.
Corporate bunkers owned by BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street once again. And then you have something another interesting twist that comes to the table over all of this. And this has been going on for roughly about the last 2 years now, 3 years now, roughly, where you have historical and current scientists that have been speaking on the evidence of pole shifting and pole shifted timelines and these massive geological events to show the evidence of these events having already taken a place, like with inside of Earth's history. And then again, with individuals like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Kinsaki and a few other ones that have been coming out to the forefront discussing events that they see coming down the pike and being basically silenced. You got one side of it with Neil deGrasse Tyson, who seems to be like the major poster boy for the media narrative.
Yes.
Then you have other individuals like Kinsaki and a few other ones that are many more times more accoladed than he is, than Neil is, that are just being completely covered up. Like, we got to silence these individuals. We got to stop them from posting on YouTube. We got to stop them from putting out information to the public or being seen. And even now, you're starting to see Kinsaki go to international TV networks to be able to get the information out that he's been discussing on cataclysmic events that he sees and that he currently sees with those events that are happening down the pike.
Right.
And that brings us into a timeline that is going to be probably the scariest part of this entire timeline there is.
I would agree. And one of the things just to reflect on, Neil has always stood out and said with no hesitation, but his delivery was a little bit off. So I'll give you an analogy of what I'm going to believe he was trying to say without saying it, and don't know if he was doing it intentionally. But I feel in ways this body, this planet of Earth, started out rough. It was created things. It just didn't appear in beautification, trees, everything. I think when we look at the science behind it, it started in a motion of slowness, and it evolved just as men do, and women, as humanity has. And it comes to a point and it neutralizes itself. And as things change to keep us in order, law and order, with the sun, the moon, the stars, et cetera, then we start to go towards what nobody really likes to discuss. Extinction levels of devastation, of pole shifts, of the earth slamming and suddenly stopping, and the core keeps moving, and that 1,000-mile-per-hour wind occurs. So just to say, if he would come out and just say it like that, but what he did say was he jumped over it. He said it was rough coming in, it's going to be rough going out. So where I'm filling in the blanks a little bit more, but again, not the right time to do it, but just to say, if you do listen to anything Neil says, pay close attention to him and be very open-minded to his subject matter as how he presents it, because there's probably something, especially now more than ever, something more to the eye, something more to the ear that can't be said anymore. So take it from wherever you want. We left off with some of the worst part of the scenarios, and now it looks like we're going to be reflecting into a new Stone Age and flood worldwide. So are we going to be going back to the beginning?
Well, I think with what we're seeing now and what is going to be coming down the timeline here, and these are things that we currently are experiencing right now. With,
True.
Massive sun events happening currently that are not being explained through CME. And I think that that's highly important for people to understand. When we see a mass coronal ejection taking place on our sun, it's typically over a dark hole, a gravity well, et cetera, and we deem that to be a CME. But what we're seeing now is sun activity where we're having 200-mile high plasma shooting off the top surface of the sun that isn't coming out of dark wells. It isn't coming out of gravity wells. So then we also are starting to see those effects on our planet in conjunction with our own Van Allen belt region, with the fact that you currently have, very major portions of O3 that are getting very dangerously close to our Earth. You also have world events through geopolitical events happening worldwide, with the world war events that are taking place, and it seems like we're building up to those particular events, which I believe are smokescreens to cover up these cataclysmic events to come.
Right.
That's my personal opinion. I think that they have strategically planned these chaotic events to take place to get everybody looking in directions, just like all of these celebrities being arrested, all these scandals that are happening, political, fights that are taking place, the Joe Biden and Donald Trump nonsense that we've been seeing that continuously keeps on being pushed out to the public, as well as the Putin stuff, Ukrainian stuff, the Israelis. Like, folks, go down a list. There is so much happening right now chaotically around the world that it's keeping everyone looking in directions, in all directions, and not one specific direction, which
That's
I think is highly important. Okay? Then you're starting to see social uprising around the world. And then the question becomes, are these celestial events happening on society? So if you start reading research documentation and research papers on how celestial weather or astral weather affects our planet, and in turn, how do those energies that are being released on this planet affect society as a whole? Mentally, physically, socially, how does that affect us?
Right.
And then leading up to what I believe to be the reason for all of these things, I think that the next thing we're going to discuss is exactly the reason why these particular events were spoken about. I think this is what these individuals who wrote this, or the individual that wrote this document back in the 1960s, I think this is what they saw. I think this is what they saw that was to come. I think this next bit of information could possibly be pointing towards a reality of why they're causing it, right? Because the question is why.
Right, exactly.
Why are they doing it? Why are they causing all of these chaotic events? Why are they looking to create all of this chaos? What is it? And again, we're talking about a huge cover-up, right? It's got to be something massive that keeps people constantly focused on something else, because you have individuals like Kinsaki and several other ones that are talking about this very object that I'm going to discuss next.
Okay, and I'd like to just make mention, when it comes to what goes on in Washington as well, they have orchestrated things very, very well. Not personal attacks on 45, things like that. 45 making suggestions that he's also going to build cities and other places that didn't represent any of the affected areas, I want to just say. So, yeah, they are, I think, without doubt, collaborating to keep us distracted from something else. And I've always said, I didn't think the population of humanity had the mindset to orchestrate something like this, and the possibility that something else may be influencing the information. So are they capable of, possibly, pulling off something this huge for some far more nefarious plan, or the possibility of it's just going to happen, it's expected, and they don't want to share the evidence of information of what it is, and they taking preparations out of everything. They don't want you to grow. They want all the water resources. They want everything taken from people. They're putting in bylaws in place. So they're tearing America and other countries apart right now, where people, we the people of a different sort, are trying to say we don't want change. But I think there's going to be this higher place of something that we're going to have to go to, of acceptance. And then you have the faculties of where people say, well, we have to reach a higher sense of consciousness, of love, of everything else, because maybe at the end, that's all we're going to have. And without that, we cannot restructure. So it's very important. You're right on the money. I think I am too, by saying this is all distraction to keep us busy away from the real faculties of the points, because most of what we're seeing isn't even relevant.
Oh, I agree. I think that you can also look at what I say is don't pay attention to the smoke screens. Pay attention to what the high holies, these 1% of the 1% are doing. And if you pay attention to what they're doing, they obviously know something that we in society, in general society, are unaware of, or they're very aware of it, and they're trying to keep the information of this particular event and this particular object I'm going to discuss out of the public's eye. And it's interesting that recently, again, I probably shouldn't even cover this until I cover the information on the object itself. But it's interesting because there's lots of things that are now being flooded on YouTube and Facebook that are calling this specific object that I'm talking about the God Killer. And it seems to be making its round, which is, again, I see that as being a form of a psyop to kind of cover up any information that comes out that's real logistical information on this particular object. So, and the listening audience is probably going, well, what are we talking about? Like, what are we discussing, right?
Maybe in ways, but I think they're going to get it. If they have to listen to this thing twice, fine. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. If I have to post this 3 times in a month to get this information out, I'll repost it 3 times over the next month, because the importance is there enough to where I think people are paying attention, and we're not going to get to them all in one night, but we will get to them. And even if we have to do this again, because there's no turning back from a situation that we see coming. You and I see this. We're trying to open up to people for them to be able to experience the thought of the proper mindset to say, oh my, leave the OMG out of it and just say, what if? Maybe it's more of what if, instead of putting, that three letter character in place. Oh my God thing. It's not about putting fear into anybody either. About what we're trying to do. We're trying to remain objective within theory, but a proper measurement of what we know is facts of an occurrence of a book, occurrence of facts that were put into a book. The fact that the government, redacted the book, picked up the book, then placed it back out with the information missing. And I'm saying it like this because we're getting people coming in and out in some of the smaller chat rooms saying, hey, I'm here and so forth. So I want to make sure I'm clear to where they catch the idea and what the proper drift is here. And that really is to go back to the focus point 1, way at the beginning of this, to understand the faculty of the information. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to you. And let's talk the narrative and the objective of what you think the subject matter is reflecting to of the object.
Well, the reason why I chose this specific object is the object I believe that is being discussed in the book that the CIA classified, or at least the documents that the CIA classified, is because it fits every aspect of the scenarios that were spoken about in the beginning stages of this particular broadcast. And again, I agree with you. If you have listeners that haven't heard the beginning of this particular broadcast, I think it's highly important for them to go back and listen to this specific broadcast so they understand the sequence of events that were spoken about in 1965, actually 63 through 65, to understand what we're going to discuss next, right?
Right.
And again, I believe this object, having studied it inside and out, every aspect of it, visually seeing the models that have been constructed about what the possibility events that will take place from this specific object's passing, all of these things that all correlate back to that initial list that we made in the very beginning stages of this particular broadcast. So in 2004, NASA gave this particular object a number. And I think that this in and of itself, the number that was given, is highly important, okay? I don't think it was by happenstance that this number was given. So NASA gives the object number as 99942. Now, that in and of itself is like, okay, well, what? I don't see what the importance of that. If you take 999 and you turn it upside down, what do you get?
Right. Build back better using the number 6.
Correct. And I finally highly suspect that they utilize this specific number sequence in the terms of events. Okay. Now, 42. 42 is interesting to me that they utilize the number as 42. If you all have not seen this particular video that's on YouTube, well, it was on YouTube. I actually put it on one of my programs a while ago. But it was after the collapse. I have to get the exact name of this video. But in the video, it's basically an animated video that goes through these events that take place, like all of these events in detail. And it's interesting that one of the buildings that's in this facility, that the individual who's the main character in this particular sequence, only about 10 minutes, one of the numbers, the main number on the building complex is number 42. Now, if you take that and you equate it to what we just dealt with the COOF, that number 42 is actually attached to the 19 protein protocols that were in the vaccine protocols that went out to the public, which is also another scenario of events, right? But this particular object that we're discussing, which NASA gave a number of 99942, was named Apophis, which in and of itself is interesting. And again, we could go down deep a rabbit hole of why they happen to have called this particular object Apophis, though I think that brings up a lot of biblical things that we'd have to discuss for several hours.
Yeah.
So, but we started research and tracking this particular object and creating protocols and models on this particular object starting in 2004 and have been tracking it ever since. And roughly about 2009, you then start getting this story that starts coming out about individuals inside of the CT community, including on AboveTopSecret.com, Godlike Productions, the Channy Project, Lunatic Outpost, and several other ones that we're discussing and talking about, oh, that's right, Nibiru, right? But then you start tracking where this Nibiru story comes from and how it got disseminated out to the public. And I think that in and of itself was a disinformation campaign to cover up this particular actual object, which is a NASA object called Apophis. Okay, and why is this particular object so important? And I believe that pertains back to the CIA, FOIA redacted Adam and Eve story of current and future cataclysmic events to take place. Because of the events in the models, okay, and the amount of cover-up and scenario disinformation campaigns that have come by the government, through the governments of the world, and not just the United States government or the Department of Defense, but we're talking about government agencies around the world that have been currently putting out disinformation campaigns to cover up this particular event, the Apophis event, and silencing astrophysicists around the world from even discussing it or even speaking on the subject matter of Apophis. So what exactly is Apophis? What are we discussing? What are we talking about? Okay, to visualize what Apophis is, it's an object that is 1,156 feet across. Just let that sink in. This is the size of roughly the Astrodome in circumference that is moving and hurtling through space. Now, the size of this particular object is so large that it's causing what we call perturbations on our sun, which I believe is what's causing these events that we're seeing with these plasma ejections in places that don't have gravity wells, these 200-mile tall plasma ejections that are taking place off of its plasma outer section, its outer coating, if you will, and as well as it's causing geological effects on our planet, like massive events. We're talking about the movement of our azimuth of our northern pole, our north and southern poles, by over 300 plus miles in the last 20 years. We're talking about creation and development of reactivation of geysers, volcanology, volcanic reaction, magmatic flow, and pressures in regions that we have never seen before over thousands of years. Again, going back to this whole entire list, right? Well,
Right.
then let's get to another section. There was a model done by NASA that what if this particular asteroid, this Apophis asteroid, not unlike Hale-Bopp or any of these other ones, may be dragging other objects in its tail wake or the wake of its tail, and because of the region in which it's going to be flying within inside of our center, like our planetary center, which will be at roughly 35,000 to 38,000 miles above the Earth's surface. This means that it will literally be within inside of our visual range for just about everybody that lives on this planet, to include interference of all of our communication satellite systems and within inside of several satellites that are currently in orbit. Let that sink in. So because of that fact, it also is changing its strategic pitch, if you will, or its angular pitch into our center, like into where we're currently at. Because it's going to be so close, the Earth's gravitational force has the capabilities of pulling in
Objects.
not only it as an object, and if it deviates by not very much, it will then 7 years later or so, if it deviates to the point at which has been calculated, will then actually hit the planet. But let's not talk about that event. Let's talk about the fact about the events that may take place that are the objects that it's actually dragging in its wake. Okay, now these objects are rated to be anywhere from the size of a refrigerator to the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. Okay, well, let's take the worst case scenario, and one of these objects is the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. More than likely, if the Earth's gravitational forces grabs a hold of that specific object, and that object then makes its way to the planet, and of course, a lot of it will be outgassed, and much of it, its outer surface, would have been gone, been taken away from its entry through our atmosphere.
Yeah, the
But
burnup.
at the same exact time, you're still going to have an object that will weigh roughly, let's say, 2,000 to 2,500 pounds, coming in at astronomical speeds. If it hits our ocean, and more than likely it's going to hit in an ocean region, this isn't talking about it hitting a major city or hitting land, right? Let's just say it hits the ocean. According to the NASA model, it will have hit the bedrock of the ocean at such a speed that it will create a tidal wave 2 miles high.
Not to mention, we could have shifting in the plates.
Well, let's. What I'm going to stick with is what's actually in the document. The document is
okay.
In the model. The model showed that it would create a tsunami 2 miles in height. Okay, well, where have we heard this exact scenario and that exact number? Oh, that's right. In the initial CIA FOIA document of the Adam and Eve story from the 1960s. Okay, outside of that, inside the NASA model, it also shows wind speeds of upwards of 1,000 miles per hour.
Right.
Oh, well, where have we heard of that taking place?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Going back to the CIA FOIA Adam and Eve story. It would also start to trigger volcanology around the Ring of Fire, with cataclysmic volcanic reactions taking place around the world. And with the amount of water and volcanic reaction and devastation that would come from that specific object hitting the ocean's, the ocean's bedrock, what would happen? Oh, that's right. NASA put out a model of this, and they showed a map. Now, isn't it interesting that the map that you showed your listeners in the beginning stages of our talk here is almost an exact duplicate of the map that was going around at the Bilderberg, at this last Bilderberg meeting.
Yeah. So you were actually able to side by side them and see this exact type of topography.
Correct.
Wow. Okay, that I was totally unaware of.
And with very slight variations.
Okay.
They're very, very slight variations. And most of those variations are around very high mountainous regions of the globe itself. Like that was the only real changes as far as like the shoreline, but it was pretty much the exact same map structure, or the exact same scenario that was played out in one map was the exact same scenario played out in the modeling map of Apophis and its possible outcomes of what kind of events that this would take. Then the interesting part of that is that it was redacted by NASA. It's no longer on their site, unfortunately, folks, and I tried to get a copy of it. I wish I would have. It literally discusses the preparing for this cataclysmic event to come. And they had an entire scenario about how governments of the world would be preparing for these particular events. Now, why is this interesting? Well, this is very interesting because if you were trying to maintain continuity of government after the fact of a cataclysmic event, you're going to want to have strategic bunkers in place, including seed banks worldwide, that are strategically placed in such a way that you simply can go underground and not have to deal with the populace above ground. And prior to this, they talked about the fact in order to maintain continuity of government prior to these events, because again, you're not going to be able to cover this up. This isn't something that governments of the world will be able to keep a secret much longer.
Right.
And my guess would be within the next 2 years, they're going to have a very difficult time trying to cover this up, as they've already given a specific date at which this particular object that we're discussing will be in proximity of our Earth, which is April 14th of 2029. Let that sink in.
Not very far off either. Not very
So
far
we
off.
ain't talking about 20 years down the road,
Right.
50 years down the road. People, we're talking about 5 years down the road. And not only 5 years down the road, but you can start to see how governments are slowly rolling out protocols and chaos disinformation campaigns in order to cover all of this information up so that no one's really paying attention to celestial space. This would include geoengineering programs that they've had worldwide. If you don't know what those are, you can check those out at geoengineeringwatch.org. That's geoengineeringwatch.org. That's not my website. I believe Dane Wigington is probably one of the top investigators of geoengineering worldwide.
Yeah.
At the top of his game.
I just got something sent by him to me.
I don't doubt that. Dane and I have been in discussions for years. He's probably the best investigator when it comes to geoengineering worldwide.
Yeah, he just came out and made some type of statement. I could forward it to you. I'll look for it and forward it to you. You sure you didn't send me anything?
Yeah, he could have sent it to you. I know he's been sending it out to different people. I know he's been talking about Georgia. Tennessee. I think it's Tennessee. I'd have to look at the document. Don't quote me on this, folks. It's either Georgia or Tennessee just passed the law to stop geoengineering happening over the top of their state.
Right. I think it has to take a final approval state, or did that already take place?
Yes. No, they're still waiting for it to go through final, but it's already passed the initial, and now it's just a matter of whether or not it makes it through, which again is interesting because it's like, okay, well, if this wasn't taking place, why would they have to pass the law?
And to me, all these things are that long game effect. If we can help push to remove as many as gently as possible and make mistakes, even if we look terrible, to up the ante and speed of things, this would be a perfect scenario way of how to do it. Even if they don't care, we know that they're going to post everything they're going to do before they do it.
As part of the fact that they, that's their first universal law.
Yeah, right. That's factual. That you're absolutely correct.
Here, then you get into that's where we start getting into Whoville. And I'm sorry, folks, I try to stay away from Whoville as much as possible because I think then real information gets confuddled with the Whoville, and then they can slap that. You're just a conspiracy theorist. Everything that I just stated on tonight's program is well documented, folks. You can find every single thing that I just spoke about on tonight's program in black and white. Just do the research. It's there. And we're not talking about from some conspiratorial site. We're talking about this particular book is actually documented on the CIA library. The information that I spoke about NASA is actually on the NASA site. All of the information about where they're building these particular locations are well documented with inside of financial, the financial information coming out of BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, as well as where Zuckerberg is buying, as well as where Bill Gates has been buying, where Oprah Winfrey has been buying. All of this stuff is well documented. So it's not, hey, this is what we think. No, we're telling you these are the documents. The documents are available. Research it, read it,
right.
Decide for yourself. But one thing you can't say is that this is some conspiratorial or conspiracy theory made up nonsense, because it's all in black and white.
Right. And it needed to be talked about. Now, I want to take you into a different, is it okay to take your mind into a different scenario?
Well, yeah, because what I was going to do at this stage in the game was going to open it up for your listeners that they had, I can't see your page or see what their questions are, but if your listeners had questions, I was willing to take questions from your audience.
Understood. Well, there was a comment that might be interested in here, but everyone's been pretty much silent coming in and out, just like observing, listening. Numbers going up and down. Maybe some are like, I don't know. Maybe they just don't have time and they're trying to be respectful, so the views go up, whatever. But a friend of mine, a good lady friend of mine, who gives a lot of support to the channel here, she made a remark of, you are correct. SO10998 JFK, SO12656 Reagan, SO12918 Clinton, SO13603 Obama, and many more. I think these are probably related documents to certain scenarios of things, which also takes me back to the fact that if we were ever to have an invasion from another worldly and the rod of God, then Star Wars and other scenarios of satellite weaponry put into space, maybe to defer things off or try to destroy them before they get here. Maybe what we were understanding from some of these words, and JFK, maybe some people say, oh, he wanted to tell the world about UFOs, and then he wanted to break the banking system to take us into a different type of system. Maybe he actually wanted to disclose this, that we were just merely 75.
Well, I would disagree about the JFK thing. I think JFK was actually going to tell us that it was a smokescreen. I think he was going to talk about exactly the information that Werner von Braun came out and said during his deathbed. I think JFK was very much aware of this scenario of this fake alien agenda through Project Bluebeam and several other projects that he would have been aware of at that specific time period. That I think he planned. I think he seriously had planned on giving the information out to the public.
Right.
And people can have their own opinion. My opinion is that's the reason why he was taken out. He had spoken about it to several individuals prior to him ever going to Dallas, and at the same exact time had been discussing the fact of giving this very secretive information out to the public because he felt that the public needed to be aware of it. And of course, then there's lots of conjecture that comes with that. That what was it he was exactly saying? What was he talking about? But people bring up, oh, he planned on bringing us back to the gold standard and all these other kind of things. And yeah, LBJ was behind it and all these, and of course that leads up to the Vietnam War.
Right.
Okay, fantastic. I think all of that is all fine and good, but that isn't enough to me. Like personally having studied that thing inside and out, left, right, and forward, that to me isn't a good enough scenario to eliminate a president of the United States. Now, him coming out and saying that this was a false flag program of what would be taking the events to take place and how it would be strategically taken, this country would be strategically taken over and dismantled. I think that in and of itself, and by way of use of the alien information and the leak protocols, disclosure projects, all this kind of stuff that came out over these last several years, and more so now than ever before. I mean, to include individuals like Tucker Carlson. I mean, come on, folks. So outside of that, I think that there's more weight to that than there is anything else. Like that he was going to disclose at some point, this is the program. And while there's certain reasons why I say that, because JFK would have been privy to Werner von Braun, a lot of people don't realize who is actually in charge of NASA. It's not the President of the United States, by the way, it's the Vice President.
Right.
So I think because he had been investigating, okay, and who was his Vice President? Let's go down the rabbit hole. Who was his Vice President? LBJ.
LBJ.
Right? He had been investigating LBJ for lots of nefarious things.
Right. I would agree.
That he was involved in. Okay.
Very questionable.
What's that?
Very questionable things.
Very questionable things. I think in doing that, in his investigation into LBJ, he would have been privy to the things that were being spoken about, discussed at NASA, especially that early 1963 time period. So I think it's very possible that he was privy to the same information that Werner von Braun was privy to, and the same information that Braun gives us later on in his deathbed confession. That there would be a scenario of events that would take place that had been discussed through world powers, that it would be, we would create a war on terror. After that, after people got desensitized to the name or the word of terror, that we then would move to another strategic target. That boogeyman would be that of little green men and aliens. But yet this entire scenario of that scenario would be made up of events that we were strategically designed technologies and events to take place to point in the direction of that, so that the government itself had plausible deniability when it came to this depopulation program.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because, if the finger being pointed can go in another direction, they take advantage of it.
Absolutely. And by the way, your listener is correct about those documents. If you all don't know this document, she should send those to you, because
Deborah
is absolutely correct about this.
I don't want to say exactly who she is, but let's just say she is very close to somebody within her household that knew things and thought of things, as well as Deborah herself. So again, it's things you and I could mention offline. I'd feel more comfortable about that. But and with all respect to her, the same as I would give to you. But yeah, all right. So we have this scenario. So let's circle back just for a quick minute. I'm sorry if I took us off base, but we can jump back in there, like with the theory. Like with the theory,
it all ties together, so I don't think you were off base at all.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I could go further, because I've been talking to somebody just recently and so forth, and I'm hoping to have him in very soon and under a stolen identity. I'll just say that for this moment right now. And if that doesn't ring a bell to you, we can go there. But what I wanted to go back to was, all right, so right now we're getting ready for an event where kids are being told to stay home from school, buy water, buy candles, buy batteries. do you have any thoughts? I mean, logically, have you thought into some of the scenario, just in theory, not a promise of fact, because I don't think any of us really know at this moment, but with everything that we're dealing with and all the subject matter that is being placed, all for maybe nefarious reasons or because it's part of a system of a test. Do you think this is part of a test that they would have the National Guard and governors calling for state of emergencies? And I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying some within the path of this event of the eclipse for, what is it, April 8th? So how do you feel about that? Just, because of what you're reflecting to and some of the things that we're talking about tonight.
I think it's one of two scenarios. This is again my own personal opinion for
Right.
the listening audience, my own personal opinion, and for those who are listening that aren't listeners, it's my personal opinion that there's one of two scenarios that they're planning for. Number one, first scenario. First scenario is they're expecting another possible Carrington event to take place during this particular crossing. That's the first scenario.
Okay.
The second scenario I think that this could be a cover-up because they're expecting a response from Putin in use of an HEM over the top of the United States.
Okay. And that might make sense why they would,
And logically speaking, I think myself personally, I think it's the latter of the two. And the reason why I state that is because he has been literally warning us of the use of an HEM over the last 9 to 10 months. He has publicly stated it. He has been on Russian TV stating it. He has been on international TV stating it. The American media corporations have kept it quiet from the public, so the public isn't hearing his speeches. And I suggest if you aren't hearing it directly from the horse's mouth, I suggest you do, because he has directly threatened the United States in its use of an HEM over the top of our country. And for those who don't know what an HEM is, that is a high electromagnetic bomb. It's not an EMP. This is second stage EMP, or what would be considered a super EMP. This is a specific weaponry device that isn't something you can shield from. You cannot use Faraday or a Faraday bag or a Faraday cage or hardened systems.
right.
Now, what I find interesting about that, and to point to that it may be the latter of the two, you just had Dennis Quaid. If all of you have not seen this particular interview, I suggest you watch it. Dennis Quaid was just on Tucker Carlson, and interesting enough, Dennis Quaid was talking about exactly what I'm talking about right this second.
Yeah, I've heard vibrations of some of these things. I haven't been totally the last couple of weeks up. I've been focusing elsewhere because it was just important for me to do that. So I have heard some things. So I don't know all the inside information, but aware of what Putin has suggested in the past. I mean, would there be a point though? Let's just say this is factually or probability could be of something of fact. Would there be a point of why they would have it point to a certain place or area, or pick a date of what we're looking at as
the fact that you have, just because you have this particular eclipse event that is in its tracking over that specific line. I think that's again is a smokescreen. If I was still inside of the intelligence community, that's what I would be using. I would be trying to use something that an event. I mean, this is standard operating procedure, right? We find an event that we know is an event that's going to take place. We then strategically design operations around that specific event that will take place so that you are affecting the world theater of operations.
Yeah. How about that?
And
I'm looking at
then your cover up is an event that, oh well, we can't be held liable for that because it's a God event, and how do we have anything to do with that? So now we create governmental plausible deniability if there's any catastrophic events that take place. due to this particular event taking place.
Right. It's almost like the way the banking system of the corporate big corporate entities are. You know, they have these companies, but yet they're on the boards that control them and facilitate the laws for them to act correctly. So how do you act correctly when you don't have to act correctly because you're on board of the oversight that's looking at you to operate correctly? So yeah, exactly. It's the scenario of wish-wash again.
And I think that that's what leads us up to the point that we're at now, which is that now you should, like, we've been discussing about having people prepare themselves for these particular events. I've been speaking on these subjects for over 20 years and saying, look, folks, these are the events that are taking place. Cover them up if you will, but at the same exact time, you must ask yourself the question, is it better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it?
Not have it.
And why
right.
do I state that? I state that as an effect of prepare now. Let your family think you're a wacko. Let the public think you're a wacko. Let the society think you're a wacko. Let your own wife think you're a wacko, or your own husband think you're a wacko. But at the same exact time, if something does happen to happen, if cataclysmic event does take place, or some scenario does play out that we are discussing on tonight's particular broadcast, at the same exact time, your family, your neighbors, the people you know, the people you care about are going to thank you for having prepared for this wacko scenario that they thought was so crazy.
Right. Because again, the long game and the baby steps are going to have effects on all of us in many ways, getting to whatever point that end game is of that time frame, of that period. And I think what has happened in many ways, the social anxiety becomes so high, people get weak in ways and say, well, I prepared for it, nothing happened. And then another date comes, and then another system of something comes, and then another system of a system of another something comes, and they get tired of it. But as you said, and as the old saying is, it's better to be safe than sorry. You'll have no regrets. But we won't get through. We won't get through to everybody, but we'll damn try dying trying to.
I absolutely agree. Again, I say I could care less what other individuals may claim, because if the scenario doesn't have it, am I crazy? Okay, fantastic. If it does happen and I am prepared for it, I have the things in place that I'm going to need in order to get myself, my loved ones, and my family through it. Am I going to be better off for it? Yes. Either way, I win. There's no loss in being prepared, folks. There is no loss in the game.
Well, the only problem with that is I get where you're at, and I love you to death. I do. And where you're coming from is the best place. But we do have people that go Social Security check to Social Security check, and they're lucky enough they're paying their bills right now. That is so disappointing because, and I think in ways we're going to have to help people. We may have to prepare for some people at some point in time to always be there some way for humanity to become better. If everything that we are discussing tonight, whether it's based upon theory or truth and facts, and we know that the paperwork exists, but if it would come to a reality, there's not going to be enough people because of how actions have been placed and things that have been done and things have been planned against humanity in many ways, which I don't exactly understand the purpose of that as a war rages between two parties, three parties, four parties, idiot parties in Washington are fighting over frivolous things that really we accomplish nothing from. But there are people, though, that are suffering in those consequences who can't do nothing for themselves.
Yeah, I agree with that. But at the same, I mean, I can, you know, well, first off, I don't know if your listeners have heard of a little program called Bigo, which, don't get me wrong, folks, I understand that the corporate company is a CCP operated just like TikTok is. I get all that. At the same exact time, every Saturday evening from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., we do a show program, which is basically a bunch of individuals like myself who are all ex-military operators or people who have worked in the field, and we give a class course on preparing for the collapse. And we tell you how to do this on the minimalist budget you could possibly imagine. How to prepare it for yourselves, how to make pemmican, how to understand plants and edibles in the field, medicines in the field, how to store your own bug out bags, your own bug out buckets, how to put those together yourself without having to purchase those from any type of organization or company, because I don't believe in that. You can make these things yourself for much less than what you could buy on Amazon or any of these other corporate companies. You can put these things together yourself.
What is that format called again? Because I'd like to post that.
There's a major broadcaster, and you can get this on any app store, either for your iPhone or for Android. You can go to the app store, like the Android app store.
Okay.
And it's called Bigo, Bigo Live, Live, Bigo Live. You could download the app, create a little page. It doesn't have to be you folks. Just got to have some way to get to me. The name of my broadcast that's on there, you can follow me directly on that particular platform, is the letter C2C podcast. So C, the number 2, C podcast. So Coast to Coast podcast.
Is that why this says fade to black at the end?
Yes, it says fade to black. That's
Jimmy!
Exactly right.
Okay.
That's exactly right. So the Coast to Coast broadcast, and I am a host on there, an official host on there. I haven't broadcasted on that network forever, but there's a really good group of people. They're all ex-military people. Rogue Yogi happens to be the lady that I do shows with. I help her out because I think she's very well educated. She comes from a military background. She was in the service herself. She does these courses on how to survive these types of cataclysmic events. And she invited me to start doing broadcasting on there again. We've been doing these this is our 4th week, tomorrow night, Saturday night, from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. That's 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time.
Okay.
5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be on Bigo Live, and it's a live broadcast. We go through, we cover everything, folks. Like, if you're on a budget, if you don't have any money, trust me, there are individuals. We've got a book you can actually get that we've broken this down into its entirety. You can get the entire book in an ebook from us for $1. It's $1. And
Wow.
It's a complete breakdown of all of the information that you need to prepare for what's to come. That $1 does not even cover her sending you to your email. So it's, again, this isn't about trying to make money off anybody. This isn't selling any kind of a product. You get on there, we teach you exactly how to make pemmican, how to make survival foods that you can make yourself, how to get a bug out bag on a budget from the dollar store, how to put that together. I mean, we cover every single aspect of preparing for this collapse as you can imagine.
Great. I'm glad I asked you that. I
wouldn't even have said it on your show. It's every Saturday.
It's perfectly. Hey, it's perfectly fine. I'm happy to have you. I'm glad that we are connected and we're friends, and that we discuss things and keep each other informed. And as far as how you are as a person, I accept that with love, because I want to learn more. I want to be able to debate ideas and have great discussions and conversations with people. There's not many out there will go to the level that you and I are at right now to talk about it. I'm not saying they're not there, but there's not really a lot there within everybody's reach. Maybe mine at times, but I try.
And outside of that, folks, something else that might be interesting to you is if your listeners are interested and going to that, it's also in a multi-panel. So you can literally come up on our panel, sit on our panel, talk to me directly, ask questions directly, get a back and forth directly from myself, truly, and several other individuals that sit up on there. We can have 12 individuals at one time during the broadcast that can sit up on the broadcast and You can literally sit in there in the channel. You can just listen, or you can sit up on the panel, ask questions yourself, bring up information and research you've done on yourself, bring that up to the listening audience. I mean, I invite your listeners to be part of that, including yourself, by the way. So
well, yeah, I think I would love to do something like that because I want to be within that foundation of preparedness.
Well, I can tell you their platform is kind of like Facebook. They don't like me very much because the first time we did the broadcast, we crashed their platform.
Oh, really? Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, crashed in a good way. Maybe, you just overwhelmed them.
Listeners, they couldn't we had so many listeners to the show, they couldn't.
You pulled
they couldn't maintain the bandwidth. So
right, you pulled the Trump on them. I get it.
Yeah, they have now throttled us. They have now
really.
given us. They have now throttled us down to a specific number, so we can't exceed our bandwidth because they didn't. Of course, we tell them that this is a show. I'm an official broadcaster on the network, and this network is huge. By the way, folks, I'm sure you have been seeing the commercials on YouTube, and I think even Facebook has been showing them some of them. And I know YouTube has been showing tons of them, tons of broadcast commercials for Beagle Live lately, and it's about 550 million people worldwide. It's huge.
You got to send me a link. I want to go there and check it out with you guys and hang out and have conversations and absorb all this information. I really do.
Oh, outside of the preparedness stuff, I can get you into some conversations because I got panels where like myself and Linda and a few other people, we have private discussions too, where we just kind of sit around and throw, wads on the wall and find out what sticks.
I did that in grade school.
Which is how we used to do it on IRC. Like people don't know this. It's like what's IRC? That's how we all kind of knew each other because we all sat around on IRC and just kind of kicking information and documents and everything. So one of us would find something, we'd send it to the other person. That was all done through IRC. There's never been really anything like that, like a real relay, right? Whereas now Bigo has become that. Like Bigo is a massive platform that we now can discuss like everything from ancient history to what's happening, cataclysmic events, you name it. I mean, UFOs, aliens, cryptids. I mean, we discuss all this stuff on there now.
Wow, and that's everything I do. I just had Mark Ollie on this afternoon. I did the Templar, histories of the Templar.
Yeah, I saw that with the Templar stuff.
Yeah, so
it's a shame that Blackett wasn't around because I would get you. He passed away unfortunately, but Blackett actually did a whole entire books on that. I mean, he covered it, uncovered the King Arthur stuff, all that. I mean, he was like.
And I all this stuff fascinates me, and it puts me in a different perspective of understanding where, as we reach to the past to come to the present, on how the possibilities of so many things could have been, would have been, but have been done different due to certain circumstances that we always seem to experience as a planet that goes through different cycles and events and things, and some within some of the same directions of what we talked to about tonight, cataclysms and so forth. Yeah, that's really great. I'm gonna hold you to it. I mean, you've always been very honest, open, and you've always come to me, and I really appreciate that. And I don't know why I was meant to come across you, or how we came across. And I think we were just in some chat room at one night talking about some open discussion format of.
No, it was the other guy. This other guy was talking to me about doing his show, and you happen to be sitting in on his show. I can't think of the gentleman's name at this point.
Was that Brian Bowden?
I think so. And he has like a big show he does on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, I think it was either Brad Olson or Brian Bowden.
Yeah, and we were both sitting in on there, and we were both kind of saying the same kind of things. And then I started to talk to you, and then you said, well, I got a show too. And I was like, oh, really? So, and then I really didn't want to do that guy's I don't know. I just didn't like the guy's approach. I talked to you. I like your approach. I think what you do is highly important, which is, hey, let's cover the information. let my listening audience make up their minds.
Right.
You let the speaker, the interviewee, which is myself in this case.
This is an informative discussion. This ain't no interview. If I'm going to interview, I'm going to get into all the deep dive stuff that nobody wants me to ask. That gets too personal.
I think the only stupid question is the question that isn't asked, but that's beside the fact.
Yeah, I get it.
But I don't like being pigeonholed. I don't like when it's well, we're going to cover this, but we're not going to cover that. No, I'm okay. I'll pass.
Well, you have a great way, an analogy of putting the things together. Like when you said, I'm not going to agree with you on the Kennedy thing. And I think that's promising when somebody objectively says, but gives you their reason for it. And you had a great hypothesis for why you did what you did and fact of information. And to be perfectly honest with you, you reminded me of something that I was not thinking of, aware of, but not thinking of on the deathbed confession. So sometimes we all get caught short on a memory of a thought of something of importance. Those, when I get off line, is when I kick myself. It's like, I could have said this, I could have said that, but you know what? Tomorrow's for that, and it can be perfect to fit it in for tomorrow. And that's what I try to do. And I take what you said as with the big, to me, that's one of the hugest compliments because of who you are, coming on and saying that to me, because I've done nothing but tried to work hard to be a person that wants to give the best information, and hopefully they start to receive it in a better way, And I it's all about I work for them. That's, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, not to throw you Scooby snacks, but I can tell you right now, I would not be on this broadcast if I didn't think you were worthy of it.
Oh, I appreciate that so deeply. I really do. I take that as in the highest. Believe me, I really do. What a compliment! It's not
like I just did this broadcast. Like I follow you. Like ever since the time period, then I read what you're posting. I'm seeing the kind of things that you're putting out. I'm listening to the broadcasts that you do. I'm listening to your, the individuals who you're having conversations with. So I'll change my terminology. And I see what you're trying to accomplish, and I can tell it's coming from the heart. You're not doing this to stroke your own ego. You're not doing this to try to get ahead of anyone else. You feel it's important for this information to get out to your listening audience, and you're doing it in the most positive and constructive manner in which you believe you're capable of doing. And
right.
I see that wholeheartedly. So
yeah, I try to stay within that perimeter. I really do, because I don't want to be, a substance of something else, because to me, that's the red carpet platform that some people really want to be a part of. And that comes with, not because it represents, in some ways, people would say Hollywood. That's not exactly true. It's all walks of life on that red carpet. It's the ones that we're looking at now that we're focusing on, saying that dirty SOB, because, so many things are coming to light and we're discovering them, and people are fighting and trying to get the information out. And of course they know they're right, because it's getting pulled down or pulled off or pulled away from them, and they happened to me the other day. So here I am, AKA in disguise. I could have probably did 3 times as good, but it will get out. It will get shared. It will get to the platforms that I normally do. And if you guys can like and share this and get it spread out to the American people, look, I couldn't come up on the platform tonight as myself. And so I'm AKA tonight, but at least I did get to deliver. And if you can get it out there in some way, you're helping everybody to know something of great importance, and they'll have to do their own research. They can do all their groundwork themselves and come to the conclusion. But I think the presentation that the ghost has just given us and what we've discussed are theoretically facts of probability of the possibility, and anything can happen. And you must remember that. So with that said, again, I'm giving you great thanks. Is there anything else you'd like to cover? And I'm in no pressure, no hurry.
I just want to thank. I want to thank your listeners. I want to thank the listeners of this broadcast. I want to thank the listeners on iHeartRadio.
Yes, thank you,
iHeartRadio, for getting the broadcast put out. I also want to thank all of the individuals who will be hearing this and listening to this broadcast on our Bigo show, our Bigo live show. I want to thank, of course, the show director here, being yourself. I want to thank you for allowing me to have a voice on your broadcast and to your listening audience.
Appreciate that so much. So you're cutting out on me, huh?
Yes, I am.
That's
I am
okay.
Cutting out on you. I had 2 hours allotted for you all.
That's okay. And, that's okay. I appreciate it. I really do. It comes from the heart.
That's why the bottom of the page says "Fade to Black."
Fade to black.
That's fun. That's funny, folks.
Yeah, I'd like to.
You all only knew.
Yeah, they'll become aware. Maybe at a different time, different place. But you know, again, I thank you for coming on. Love you as a person, and you're very genuine. And I appreciate the fact that you're like a big brother to me, looking out for me in the shadows. I do appreciate that.
Well, hopefully, as we get closer to this April 8th events, maybe we can schedule something for like mid-April. Cover what comes.
The aftermath, of Ground Zero. Yeah, that would probably be very very. Yeah, I kind of like that title.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't mean to laugh to the public. I don't. I think of these weird.
Off the cuff, you folks. Just you know, that wasn't written in the script.
No, I dream this stuff up sometimes instantly. You know, it's that some people say, "Hey, I'm going to send you a list of questions to ask me," and it's like, you know, when I'm best is when I have nothing, and if you allow me that, you'll love me more.
Well, yeah, which is why I didn't send you any questions. I just sent you a.
Well, I don't mind answering them, you know, but it's like
timeline. I just sent you a timeline.
There you go. And
there was so much stuff to cover. Like if you didn't, it would be here for 8 hours.
You're right. You're absolutely right. But you know what? You were a rock star. You went through it, but I think you understand it in a way to where the delivery works really well for you, and you're used to that because it's in your mindset. For me, it's like an acceptance, and how can I interject? Where should I interject without being, you know, going overboard in certain facts like that? So I hope I wasn't too off in any way too. But again, since you got to roll out, I'm going to wish you a great night. I want to also say happy Easter to you, and with love as to how you feel you need to celebrate that and within your beliefs, as well as I'll say that to the audience. So I'm going to leave off with a few last words, and I guess I'll sign off from you and say thank you once more time to iHeartRadio. Thank you. And for what you've done, and keep me in mind on the stream link for that. I'd like to come in and hang out and talk to some of the real pros.
I will definitely send you a link to that. I will send you the information that you're going to need on how to get on there, get in with us. Yeah.
Great.
I think you'd enjoy it. Yeah.
I'll look forward to it, and I'll come with a loaded gun. Loaded Gun Coffee, by the way, is somebody who I love.
Because the panel that I sit on, they're definitely in the know.
I don't always get to talk about in the know. See,
I'll just put it that way.
I would feel at home like that though, because you know I can't do it on. I'm faced with the localization of social media to come to something like that where you can get angry and boisterous and to the point, and your theories become more factual, and you're speaking, and your intelligence grows, and the spark in your mind just triggers. I love that interjection. I really do. Get me there. Just get me there, and I'll show up.
We'll see. But yes, I will definitely send you the info and get you all hooked up here. And I'll do that before. I'll do it first thing in the morning. That way, you're prepared for tomorrow evening.
All right. Appreciate it.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. Thank you, listeners. I appreciate it very much. This has been the Ghost Scientist, your voice for the most, here on this program. Yeah,
America Disclosing Uncensored. Thank you. Good night. All right, so back to you guys, though. Wow. You're learning a little bit more about some of the people that I do have conversations with when I try to get information on. And I'm not saying I'm a rock star for it, but, you know, there's plenty of us that really work together that nobody knows about. What's Michael really doing? And one of the things is I study, I research, I listen to things, I listen to subject matter and topics, and I just happen to love a lot of the things that I bring across. And this was one of them of an event, a possibility, and it's bigger than a possibility. We know it's been studied. They expect this. They truly expect this. Different probably from April 8th, but we are still looking into the future of less than 5 years of this and the preparation of so many different things, whether it's psyops of disinformation. This is not this big because something isn't necessary to make it be this big. I've always said that. I said there's something more going on to this plan. I've said that. And when you come on with somebody that big in the country who verifies many things that I've tried to say about how the United States will change geographically, it was something in my gut, something from past information, something that I was able to put together. And then, hey, let me share something with you. I'd like to talk to you about this because I guess he's listening. Thank God people are listening. That's, because that makes all the difference. And you talk about these things, a theory, and then you have someone with greatness that comes across and says, do you know about this particular subject matter? And I'm like, I've heard about some of it, but no, not really, because I got to be honest here. But so to deliver this tonight and the way it was done, you're going to have to go back to page one. Page one at the very beginning where this started on this show with the ghost scientists and myself. And please try to understand, we did the best we could to enlighten you with information. And I think from the only source is going to be your source of how you accept or choose to research, because that is what's really going to matter. The layout's there, the information's there, and if I can get you anything more, I will gladly do it. And again, so I'm in prison right now, going through the effects of what happens when you post something that they don't agree with, and that did happen. I don't know if I got reported. I don't know if it's just because it was this picture, but it did happen. So I got like 20 some days to go or something like that. I don't know, whatever. It's going to be hard on me because I love to do this and interact with people, but it's not going to stop me from being able to be shared. So if you just can pay attention to this name, friend it, KLA Joe, I can come across that way. And also you'll be able to catch it if I just do a recording and I upload it. And so you can go to YouTube, 10 o'clock talks. And please subscribe if you go there, please, because they're doing these weird things now. If you're, I don't know, it takes subscribers to get length. Otherwise, they put you on short 8-minute clips. So I have to make pre-records and put them up instead of doing live feeds. And I would like to grow to where the power of the messages and the information comes out much stronger for you guys. So you have that in your control and you have something to rely on. I also have some great guests coming up. Carter Broussard is going to be on very shortly. Maria Wheatley, fantastic person with so much background and the ancient and megalithic and Stonehenge and skulls and dowsing and just phenomenal stuff. And I think you guys will understand and be able to put together why I do what I do and why the past is so important to the present, because it exposes everything if you go back far enough and take the steps to come out of it to get here where we are now in 2024. But it's been a fantastic night. It was a doubleheader today. I did earlier with Mark Ully, and everybody loves him. I mean, get on there, give him a thumbs up, say hello to him. Ernie, a special message from you. He will talk to you. He's going to be fascinated with what you had to say about what you and I do know. Squatchman, thanks for coming in. Beth, thank you for what you do. I hope you got this shared into some of our messenger groups. And if you did get it to your pages, it means a lot to me. I think you see that I'm concentrating now to let you guys know that the capability of bigger steps can happen for all of us, and you'll be a part of it, because I want you to be part of what the content is because of your interest and the interest that you have shown to me that you have for what I do. And that I do greatly appreciate. So I don't want to sound like an old love fart. That's not it. But it's nice to get a compliment, and it's nice to see that people appreciate you. Into the future, though, there's going to be other guests coming on. It's going to be a little weird the next 20 days because you guys are so used to it just flipping up on your page. Make the adjustments that you can, and I'll be on as often as I can. I'll try to put subject matter on so you guys see it, because they're not bothering me to advertise. They're just saying no live, no matter what. Bad boy, yeah, bad. You know how that is. Any questions for me before this kind of ends on this beautiful Friday night? And thank you so many that came in and out. Okay, C2C podcast, coast to coast. Okay, I'm just saying. It's nice to get into bigger things like that. People know what they are. Anyway, let's see what else we have here. Ernie, yeah, I knew I saw you there. Perfect timing, having my nightcap. Oh, so you got the cigar with you. I'm just going to say it like that. All right, what else? Charlotte's, if I'm reading it right, my eyes bad anyway. Had a couple of people. Vonda tapping. Won't open. I don't know what that means. Maybe we were having a little bit of a feed problem, but it seemed like everything went really smooth on this end. Not a lot of comments, but I guess a lot of people were listening to the messages, and that's what's important. So the Ghostman, just great. And we will keep you up to date, and I think we should probably look into the middle of April, and if he's willing to come back, and oh my God, if he does, that's just incredible, because I know he works on a very tight schedule. His time's important. Maybe we will be able to talk about this ground zero doomsday apocalyptical possibility event. His theory on it, though, is like very interesting. You learn a little bit by talking to everybody, and that's how it should always be. With that said, I want everybody to have a blessed Easter. I hope you all got good food, safe food. I mean, what we're in such on that part. Oh my God. It doesn't matter what we do, what we pick up, and what we look at, what we hear, what we see, what we drink, what we eat. And I'm not going to say the last part that came to mind. Didn't sound right. But I mean, all we can do is do the best we can, right? All we can do is the best we can. And if an event on April 8th, if there's something of Russia or somewhere else did occur, that would put the United States in a state of black. Okay. Not 3 days of darkness, but a state of black. That means, there is no more this for a while. There are things that are just not going to collaborate or be able to communicate until they would be able to repair the things if we could get back up into our own airspace to do it. I don't know if it would come to it. I hope to God not. And I think the ghost would say the same thing. But to put it out there, it doesn't hurt to not weigh all the information, right? Anyway, we're in bad times. They're not getting better. And I don't believe what we see as far as in Washington and what occurs. I don't believe half of what we see. I really don't. I know that there are some things there. And maybe this $1.2 trillion that we're seeing go into other scenarios are actually going to be in place for an event, this possibility of something that's catastrophic to happen on the 8th. I don't know, but maybe a lot of things, and just like maybe a lot of people are really alive, or a lot of people are really dead. I mean, how do you know? It's all speculation, because there's only so much proof you have. And I have some proof of somebody, and I'm waiting on just getting a date with him. And it's going to be so interesting. It's going to be mind-blowing. And it's tied to something that is just so extremely huge. I would feel so privileged to get this done and to get the information out to you, where you would see for yourself who I would be introducing to the show. And when I do, and when this is all done and the connections made properly and perfectly, I will do that. In the meantime, I'm not going to spoil it and put any spoilers out there on it, because I want to know that the date is, like it's a gentleman's agreement kind of thing. Unless you get sick or something, I get it. We got to postpone something. But, it's big. It's big for me, and I'm intrigued with it. And if what I know and what I learned and what will be said will put you somewhere else on fact. I mean, just will truly blow your mind. This is not somebody of, oh, George's podcast talking about ghost stories. No, we're talking about a person of an entity so high up, it's unreal. And he wants to come out. He wants to come out and he wants to tell everybody certain things, and I can't wait to do it. So, with that said, I'm going to quit babbling here. It's been a great night. Thank you. And I hope you did get some things shared. I'm going to get off here. This is where work doesn't end. In order to get this out to the world, I have to now sit and upload and share to other groups and other formats. But this is political in big ways. But it's bigger than that. A show category like this, where we talk about this, where everybody's eyes are open to the elements of everything going on, especially for April 8th coming up, it's eligible to be shared to any group in America, because everybody has the need to know, because your government will never tell you. They will keep you in the dark rather than to put you in what they would call in fear, even though we live within it every day. And they're letting us know that the example of fear exists. And maybe that's why that is the other pressure point that they use. I don't know. But we can think about it and theorize it. Anyway, I'm Michael Anthony. This is America. Excuse me. America Disclosing Uncensored. You can find me on YouTube on 10 O'Clock Talks, because they wouldn't give me my other channel back, but I've been building up there. Go see. It's just, I wish I could be live there, but I can't. They're only giving me 8-minute slots. I don't understand that, but we'll figure it out. I have to do some homework this weekend. It's going to be more work. Sometimes it's just bang, mind blowing what you go through. And like I said, work starts after I get off here. I got a lot of work to do. So you guys have a great night and a happy Easter. I will be around. I'll be a little bit semi-quiet to make sure I protect all the show's interests that are coming up, because if I go too far, they'll eliminate me. They'll eliminate whoever they have to if information is not what they're agreeing to. So anyway, with that said, I love you all. Have a great night. We'll talk soon, I promise, and I'll be posting some more things, but being quiet at the same time. Hit me up. Send me something on Messenger. Let me know what kind of shows you guys want to have. Thanks.